Which,
Well, thanks so much for the kind words. I really appreciate it. Yeah, I mean, I definitely try to, I mean, especially with EMI, the interesting thing is that there are so many publicly traded companies involved.
mm,
A lot of people are approaching it, a lot of the music media approaches it just from the music side, but, I try to dig into, what I know about the publicly traded companies and, get on the Bloomberg machine and kind of,
yeah,
call up analysts. And, that's kind of the benefit of some of the bigger companies being involved is there are people, there are a lot of people to talk to about it on, both on the music side and sort of on the corporate side, and in between. And that's kind of how I try to do my reporting on that sort of thing. But it's really interesting to see, with Warner now too and EMI,
yeah,
the various reports when a certain article will come out, you could almost tell, how it came about, it was kind of maybe leaked to somebody
uh,
liberally, or they came across it, or there's just it's I think it's a really exciting time in the music industry. I mean, in terms of you've got two of the four majors up for sale, the other two in major flux, at the top. And throughout the executive ranks, and then you've got these big dogs sitting in the wings, maybe making a move in Apple, Google,
yeah.
Amazon I guess already did, but just a very exciting time to be following the music industry, and yeah, no, I just try to dig into it however I can.
Oh yeah, and I think you do a good job. I mean, you're right that the industry is changing rapidly, and the way it's changing, it's really tough. How can I say this? Well, let me put it this way. From your perspective, the industry's changed so fast. I think you and I both have the same view on what's going to happen with the MI. My guess is it's going to get broken up or it's going to get sold off component-wise because they've got some pretty good holdings. But from the independent music community, we're looking at two different things. It's the best and the worst of times. We've got the majors are going away, which and productive capacity for us. We can produce stuff at home that's you couldn't possibly do even like 6 years ago. The difficulty being where are those profitable distribution channels?
Right.
How do you make money in an industry where it's damn near a free for all? It's becoming one. So that's kind of the odd thing about it. But the legacies that we're still dealing with, the old four. Oh, it seems like we're a bit out in the video there.
Oop,
Okay, we're back. Okay.
okay.
The legacies we're dealing with some of these the ways of doing business. I think for an independent musician, it's kind of difficult for us to say, oh well, this is the old path, it didn't work. Here's the new path because the new path has been established. Which
Right.
brings me a little bit to if we could talk about your latest book because this is an interesting idea that came up during some of our emailing back and forth and our talks. Um, Jay-Z, who's now worth what? He was about $500 million.
Close to half a billion,
Close to
yeah.
half a billion. He's 40 years old, $500 million. This guy strikes me, and tell me if I'm wrong on this, and this is where I think it's valuable for musicians to hear this. Um, he is first and foremost a businessman who happened to be very good at music. So his idea is how do I make money consistently? And when it shifted from his early career to that of music, it was just it wasn't a change in mentality. It was a change in product. Do you think that's I know it's a very glossed over perspective, but talk to me a little bit about how about the early days of Jay-Z, how he got started and his mentality of
I would
how he looked
say,
at money.
I mean, from the research I did in my book, um, his friends around the Marcy Projects and Bedford Stuyvesant say that by the age of in his early teens he was already known as a very gifted rapper. That was something he was really passionate about early on, and he befriended an older rapper by the name of Jazzo, who's actually the first rapper to get a record deal with EMI.
Mm.
Um, Feline interference. Okay. Um, and so EMI actually took Jay-Z to London to record his first album. This is in the late '80s. Jay-Z was a teenager, and this was Jay-Z's first taste of the high life, and the music business, and kind of making it. But Jazzo, I don't know. I think he had kind of a bad experience with EMI that it didn't promote his album, maybe perhaps the way they should. It kind of flopped. Jay-Z came back and he talked his way onto Big Daddy Kane's tour bus, who's another big-time rapper at the time, and kind of rapped for room and board. But he found that he couldn't really make any money. So when he came back and there was this availability, for kind of a life of crime, but a very lucrative one, he kind of hopped into that. But he had already made all these connections in the hip hop world, and he kind of kept coming back and hopping on remixes, and and people in the industry kept on convincing him, on the underground scene, not on the corporate side, not on the label side, but
Okay.
and after a while, he realized that there was a lot of money to be made actually in music, and he thought that he had enough kind of momentum to to get moving. And there's a well documented incident where he was shot at by a rival drug dealer, and that. A lot of people I talked to said that this also, kind of convinced him to go hard with the music. But yeah, I mean, I think, Jay-Z's got a nose for money. And it's not just where the money is, but it's where it's going to be. He's really good at figuring that out, because even in the late 90s when, he launched his own record label, Rockefeller Records, with Damon Dash. Eventually, they sold a chunk of it to Def Jam. And then, later another chunk, and eventually they sold the whole thing to Def Jam. But even as they were making a lot of money, selling CDs in the late '90s, Jay-Z was already thinking, what's the next step, and that was clothing. And so he, in the I think it was '98 or '99, he was rapping about this clothing brand called Iceberg, and
They made a lot of money off that. Iceberg made decent money off that, right? Didn't he approach them?
the sales skyrocketed, and so
Yeah.
Jay-Z, shrewdly went to the management at Iceberg and he said, "Hey, I'm rapping about your clothes. Let's work out a formal endorsement deal or some kind of equity stake or something like that." But they weren't interested. So he and his business partner Damon Dash went and started their own.
Of course.
10 years later, Jay-Z sold it for the rights. I think he sold for $204 million to Iconics, which is a big publicly traded licensing company. So not so bad, considering the alternative was just keeping rapping about other people's clothing brands. So that's something that he's always done. I mean, in addition to following, and he's done it again. He followed, so he got into clothing, then he got into liquor. He eventually followed his nose for money into the executive ranks at record labels, and in 2007, 2008, he went and he signed this big unorthodox deal with Live Nation, a 360 deal, touring, and a multi-rights deal covering all sorts of things. But that was almost kind of anticipating the demise of the traditional record label, and that was a couple of years ago, and he was already moving on to this other thing. So
yeah, he has a knack for targeting markets. I think what's daunting to independent musicians